Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a very serious, evidence-based look at a massive paradigm shift in human evolution. I'm going to ask you to totally rethink an origin story you've probably heard your entire life. We're going deep into our evolutionary past to figure out the actual fundamental architecture of human survival. Here's the core thesis we're building today. Humans are what biologists call obligate cooperative breeders. We didn't just stumble into having big brains and then suddenly decide to share the work of raising kids. No, it's the exact opposite. We learned to share the work first, and that is what paid the metabolic toll for the brains. Shared childcare isn't just some modern cultural nicety or a convenient lifestyle choice. It is literally the fundamental metabolic engine that made our unprecedented brain expansion possible. The math is undeniable here. Cooperation came first, the big brain followed. So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by inverting that origin story, then dive into what it means to be obligate cooperative breeders. From there, we'll look at the evidence of ancestral coalitions, the riparian ecological anchor, tackle the provisioning counterargument, and finally, falsify the man-the-hunter myth. All right, Section 1, the origin story inverted. We really need to dismantle this legacy narrative that's been dominating textbooks for decades. You know the one, the assumption that hominins first developed these large, complex brains, and those big brains eventually made us clever, highly social, and capable of cooperation. But if you look at the energetic math of biology, it simply doesn't allow for that sequence. The actual evolutionary logic goes like this. Step 1, shared infant care among a broad network absolutely had to be established. Step 2, this distributed care released the intense metabolic constraints on the mother. And only then do we reach Step 3, unprecedented brain expansion. The cooperative network paid the energetic bill for the brain. Section 2, obligate cooperative breeders. Consider this biological anomaly. A human mother typically has an interbirth interval, the time between having kids, of about 3 years. Now compare that to chimpanzees who sit at around 5 years, or orangutans at 7 to 8 years. Because of our uniquely short birth spacing, combined with the exceptionally long dependency of our huge-brained infants, human mothers routinely do something no solitary ape mother ever attempts. They stack multiple dependent offspring of different ages, all at the exact same time. And that brings us to an inescapable conclusion. An ape feeding 3 children of 3 different ages at once absolutely cannot do it alone. We are that ape. Therefore, we never did it alone. The whole idea of the isolated mother trying to raise children without a robust network, it's an evolutionarily novel and, frankly, highly hazardous condition. Our biology specifically routed around that isolated scenario millions of years ago. This biological reality is the very foundation of Sarah Hardy's cooperative breeding model. A single mother just cannot forage enough calories to support her own metabolic needs while also fueling the immense demands of multiple stacked dependents. That gap between maternal supply and infant demand was closed by allomothers, grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, and unrelated helpers. In fact, the grandmother hypothesis suggests human menopause itself is an allomothering adaptation, freeing up post-reproductive females to dedicate their energy to provisioning grandchildren. And on top of that, this shared nursery acted as a crucible for human cognition. Think about it. An infant raised by multiple caregivers has to learn to read intentions, solicit attention, and track different minds just to survive. Our distinctive hypersocial cognition is a direct product of this cooperative breeding. Section 3, evidence of ancestral coalitions. 85%. This number is absolutely critical evidence for our thesis that cooperation preceded brain expansion. Based on rigorous field data from Martin Serbeck and his colleagues, drawn from nearly 30 years of observing wild bonobos, we see that 85% of female bonobo coalitions actively target males. When they really break down Serbeck's findings, a profound picture of deep-time evidence emerges. These female coalitions typically number 3 to 5 individuals, but here's the crucial part. They form among unrelated females, despite a mating system where females disperse and leave their kin behind. They secure power and status through these alliances, not raw individual physical strength. And within these alliances, we see rudimentary allomothering, a real tolerance for infant handling and sharing among the group. These behaviors represent the exact behavioral substrate that eventually paid for our massive brains. As the saying goes, the female alliance is not something humans thought up. We inherited it. You can still watch it happen in the forest today. We're establishing here that the female coalition and care structure isn't some recent human invention. It is plausibly ancestral to the evolutionary split between the human and chimpanzee bonobo lineages. This was a core feature of our last common ancestor.
Section 4. The riparian ecological anchor.
Now, to physically build those expanding brains, we faced a strict nutritional imperative. DHA is a long-chain fatty acid that is absolutely essential for building brain tissue. And you know what? You don't find this lying around in abundance walking across a dry savanna. It is highly concentrated in aquatic and riparian food webs. So the metabolic base for our massive brains required foraging in wet, water-adjacent environments. This serves as critical ecological evidence backing up our entire thesis.
And when we look at the paleoenvironmental evidence, that is exactly what we find. The data from Wolde Gabriel and his colleagues regarding Ardipithecus shows early hominins did not live on open grasslands. Their world was riverine and marshy woodland. The earliest hominin contexts consistently come back wet. Foraging ranges were anchored by female requirements. Basically, hominins went where mothers and infants could feed safely and reliably. Proximity to coasts, estuaries, and riverbanks provided that critical DHA needed to fuel encephalization, which is just the scientific term for the unprecedented evolutionary expansion of the human brain.
Section 5. The provisioning counterargument.
Now, we have to rigorously tackle the strongest mainstream academic pushback to this model. Groups like CARTA correctly point out that active provisioning, proactively handing food to another's infant, is largely absent in other great apes. Because of this, they classify bonobos as non-cooperative breeders. But we really need to parse this definition carefully. On one side, we have the ancestral substrate, coalitionary defense, infant sharing and handling, which is absolutely present in our closest ape relatives. On the other side, we have active, heavy provisioning, which is undeniably a uniquely human hominin elaboration. The resolution to this debate is actually pretty clear. Granting that humans perfected the provisioning is not granting that humans invented the coalition. We can freely concede that full proactive provisioning is derived in humans without sacrificing our core thesis. Humans elaborated upon an incredibly ancient alliance structure. We took the rudimentary infant handling seen in the forest and escalated it, for sure, but the foundational cooperative network was already there. We absolutely did not invent cooperative breeding from scratch.
Section 6. Falsifying man the hunter.
It's finally time to dismantle a massive legacy ideological overlay. As anthropologists have pointed out, man the hunter was never an actual finding. It was a self-portrait the 20th century painted and hung in the cave. This absolutely puts the nail in the coffin of that mid-century assumption of the solitary male provisioner striding across the dry savanna to feed a dependent nuclear family. That model simply does not align with any of the biological, energetic, or ecological data we have just examined. Instead of the hunter myth, we need to look to the true organizing principles of our species. The evolutionary framework didn't prioritize male hunting. The absolute anchor was female foraging. The environment wasn't a dry grassland, it was riparian and aquatic. And the fundamental unit of survival wasn't the isolated nuclear pair, it was the distributed care coalition. It is not that hominins never hunted, but hunting was definitely not the organizing principle of human social evolution. Women, infants, and the cooperative network were. Which brings us to an unavoidable and highly relevant conclusion about the modern era. The clinic is the modern grandmother. When we look at contemporary medical and social institutions, the clinic, the midwife, public insurance networks, we are not just looking at modern conveniences. We are looking at the direct institutional translation of a multi-million-year-old biological adaptation. These structures are the modern manifestation of the ancestral coalition we physically require to survive. So I want to leave you with this provocative question to ponder. What happens when a society dismantles a multi-million-year-old adaptation and closes the clinic? The maternity care desert isn't just a modern policy failure, it is a severe rupture in our deepest evolutionary strategy. This brings us right to the precipice of the contemporary U.S. maternal health crisis, a modern consequence we will be exploring in depth in our upcoming sequel. Until then, thank you for joining us on this explainer, and keep questioning the narratives.